Okay, welcome back. And we are continuing with our special guest, Nikita from Rimi Baltic. And he will tell us a story how the AI transformed or transforming retail.
Yeah, I guess I can start
Please,
then.
Nikita.
Thank you, Aldis. Check. One step back. All right. You can hear me, yes? Good. So we have some time. Aldis told me to take a little bit longer than the other guys because everybody's taking shorter than they're supposed to, so there is extra time. Who am I? My name is Nikita. My academic background is in economics and finance, so hold up your questions about what activation functions we use and things like that. But for the past 4 years, I've been leading the data and AI transformation in Rimi together with my small team. And today I'll share some of the lessons from that journey. And the screen is glitching a bit. Stuff is disappearing. Can you check that? All right. Actually, is it possible to have presenter modes with the notes here? That would be good. Just a moment. Come on, you're showing my notes. No, it's not working. I can roll without the notes as well, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. I was promised I'm going to have notes here, so I didn't memorize my speech.
Now I see, Nikita, how you could do it longer, how you promised to do it
yeah,
longer.
technical challenge. Let's give it 10 seconds. I can help you do it. You go to slideshow. Anybody knows how to do it? Use presenter view is ticked, so that should work. Check the monitor. No, it's not working. Whatever, guys. OK, let's go on. Can you play it? Fine. So first, I want to do a little survey. So there's probably many companies represented here from different industries. Can you raise your hand if your company uses AI, whatever your definition of that is? OK, nice. And how many of you think that you're better than average in the Baltics at using AI? Less than half. OK, statistically probable. Good. Well, the thing is that this AI hype, when did it start? Maybe 3-4 years back, really stroked the world like a lightning, and everybody was starting to hectically think, okay, how can we sprinkle a little bit of AI magic on our business processes? And CEO said, well, I read in a magazine on an airplane that everybody's doing this AI thing. What are we doing with that? And the CFO said, well, we need to invest in it, but what's the return really? How much money should we invest in it, and how should we measure the returns? And the CTO, CIO said, well, we have guys who know how to do AI, so just give us some money, we will do it. And that's what many companies did. They invested millions in technology platforms, built data lakes, hired AI teams, PhDs, and waited for results. And yet, as of last year, only 1 in 10 companies actually say that they have achieved some benefits with AI. So that's kind of surprising. And many thought that AI is a fad because of this, yeah? And so, well, this is going to pass, we will sit out, and nothing will happen. But I think by now it's becoming clear that this is not a fad, and kind of it has passed the test of business value and of feasibility, and really it can bring value to the companies that are using it. And we can see it kind of on the Gartner hype curve. You probably know what that is. Many companies have got out of that pit of disillusionment, climbed over the slope of enlightenment, yeah, and are now actually using these things at scale productively with hundreds, sometimes thousands of models in production. And there's many technologies that go through that hype curve, whether electricity, computers, whatever, you name it. Yeah? But the one that AI reminds me most of is probably fire, because back when we started to understand that this thing exists, it was kind of seen as a phenomenon, something magical. We started worshiping it, developed myths around it, we were fearing it. Yeah, there's all kinds of stories that humanity came up with, what fire is about, and it's very similar with AI. Yeah? But then when time passed, this really became business as usual. Yeah? Fire is deployed in thousands of processes. at industrial scale. We know what to expect from it. We have procedures around deploying it. We know exactly what it can and cannot do. And the same will happen with AI. I think we're past that stage when it's kind of the scary robots thing and so on. But the reality is that sooner or later, it will be deployed in every process. We'll support every decision where, of course, there is a business case. But it's not going away. And those of you who think that we can just kind of sit out this wave and everything will be fine, can only wish you good luck. And the reason behind that is that AI fundamentally changes how we manage organizations, how we make decisions. Unlike other kind of hypey technologies, this is really touches on something that is fundamental, humans, yeah? What we do, what we don't do, how we approach problems, and so on. So the question is, how do you really take these ideas from something that is just kind of in PowerPoint slides, or maybe you have some use cases that you have come up with, to something that really permeates every process and every decision that you have in the company? Well, we at Rimi have been on quite a journey. I remember back in 2018, I started in another role in Rimi on the business side. And when I realized they were not doing anything in data science or AI, I thought, OK, how can I install R on my computer? And I went to IT. We installed R. I spent a month trying to connect to the databases, make something out of it, and thought, OK, cool, we're doing data science. Yeah? Then, of course, we went through the whole journey of discovery, realized that we need a North Star. We need to imagine how it looks and feels when we actually are data-driven, when we are, and, well, we wish to be an AI-first company. How does it look and feel? What are those things that people do on a daily basis? How we approach different use cases and projects? What kind of skills we hire for, and so on and so forth. So we built that North Star, started building different use cases in kind of different ways. Definitely not the best approach to this, but over time, we really try to master the approach to this. Over time, we also realized that we really need to invest a lot more in the AI literacy and data literacy as such, because many times the quality of the backlogs and the ability of people to be efficient parts of data science projects was just not there, because for them it was a complete mystery. Kind of, what is this thing? Can you install it for me? Will it do stuff? Yeah, and so on. And now, kind of with 12 use cases live, AI, data science, again, we can argue about names, and 7 more in progress, we can say that we are at the start of really making this a lot more scalable, a lot more systematic. Well, you might think, OK, cool, Rimi cracked it. They have mastered AI, but we don't see it that way. We are at the very beginning of this journey, I would say, because and this is actually a fallacy that I hear from many companies. They are so proud of having done some AI. They make posts about it and speak in conferences, and we are using AI. The reality is that there is nothing special about it anymore. It's kind of table stakes. Yeah, it's like we are using the internet. Cool. How are you using it? Are you better at it than other companies? So there's many stages in front of that, because the competitive advantage is not in using AI. It's in doing it better, faster, cheaper than your competitors. And in the long term, that's the only thing that will matter. Yeah? Now it's just everywhere. There's, of course, many questions you need to answer, have answers to, and act on in order to make kind of a foundation that you can scale on. I will not go through all of this stuff. This is just to say that it's not just about technology, and it's a common thing you probably hear from people who have gone through such a journey, that things come down to people, to processes, just like any other big change in a company. It's not about the tools, and it's not about the models. So there's a lot of things you need to answer to yourself. And we've spent a lot of effort really trying to figure out answers and solutions to many of these questions. But I'll share some of the lessons that we have learned on that journey. There are some obvious lessons that you can find on Google, yeah? Don't start by building a data lake. Don't hire PhD data scientists and expect them they will do everything. These things are kind of well known by now, yeah? I will share the things that were not so obvious in the beginning, or perhaps we didn't do proper research. I will share the things that we see only now, that they would have made that journey a lot shorter, and we would have harnessed a lot more value throughout that journey. So there'll be 5 short lessons from every area. How are we on time, actually? I also thought there would be a timer there, not just the notes. Aldi? What's the time now? OK. So first, probably the most important lesson from this area. You know, back in the day, we did this whole discovery exercise and mapped some 150 different use cases from all business functions, from logistics, marketing, real estate, supply chain, CRM, whatever, and thought, okay, this is our AI roadmap, this is our backlog, the 150 things we can do with this technology. The reality, however, was that it was those use cases and those projects that didn't originate there, but that originated in the business minds themselves that actually were successful. One of the projects that we picked from the AI roadmap was kind of, I think it was, the model was done in January and it's ready to be deployed, but the business side still haven't found the time, resources, and attention to deploy it and change the business process accordingly. It is in supply chain. That is to say that if something is coming from your AI team, it's AI roadmap, it's their backlog, it has high chances of failing because it didn't have the appropriate resources and attention from the business side to actually integrate it back into the business process. Yeah, and vice versa, the things that actually appeared as a business roadmap are those that end up happening. Yeah, so the teams and the departments in your companies that see AI roadmap not as a separate thing, not living in a box, but as input for their business roadmap, those are the teams that will actually harness most value from this. Second of all, AI projects are by nature experimental. It's very different from traditional software development. Yeah, and usually software developers say they can either do less or take longer, yeah. But if they say that they are 80% done with something, they're probably right. With AI projects, data science projects, it's unpredictable. You cannot commit that you can extract signal from data until you've actually tried. Yeah, so things that were supposed to take 6 weeks, they take 6 months. Models that were supposed to work don't work, and so on. So we need to really understand how you approach this, because in the traditional ways of working, we say there is a project, this is what we'll give, this is the return, let's do it. Here, the return is quite uncertain, and you will have a hard time convincing your CFOs or whatever who is resource owner to actually run a project. So you need to set these guardrails. What are you going to do? Are you going to spend $500,000 on building AI projects and then say, did it work or not? Are you going to spend $1 million or maybe 10,000? Or do you want your very first project to give returns? These are the things you'll have to really answer to yourselves. How do you treat this? Maybe you treat it as a startup, yeah, and give it 2 years to generate value. So what do you do about it? Another thing related to that, speaking of startups, as Peter Thiel said in 0 to 1, the first thing you need to maximize when you have some startup-ish looking thing is learning. It's not value. So that's what we also did when we prioritized the use cases in the beginning on this classical matrix of how much money and how easy it is, value and feasibility. The reflex was, okay, let's take the big ticket things, like optimize that big process. Yeah. But the thing is that those processes are usually so complex and intertwined with other things that you are most likely to fail. So you'll not actually learn anything about doing AI projects. So we prioritized and put a much higher weight on feasibility. How likely are we actually to go from idea to some kind of value, even if this use case doesn't bring us millions? And this gave us a lot of learnings, a lot of questions that we found answers to. How do we collaborate, business and data science? What tools do we use? Do we have some coding guidelines? How do we deploy this? What challenges come when we try to explain the models to the business, and so on and so forth. The next thing is about creating value incrementally, another startup-ish looking, agile-ish lesson for you, but well. The thing is that you can aim to build some model that does something, but then if you don't bring any value and show any results to the business until that moment, it has all the same problems as kind of waterfall project management in other projects. You can build the wrong thing, and you also have really long time to value. For example, in one use case that we did recently, we tried to kind of optimize the number of checkout machines in the store. So we had this big model in mind, how we will take customer flows and try to simulate how they are distributed between different checkouts and see what's that appropriate number of machines to put so that we don't have big queues, yeah, and we don't have checkouts that are not being used. So it turned out to be quite a complex model, taking months to build. But what we did is we actually packaged the first results of the analysis, kind of the first outputs of the regression. Yeah, you would say, OK, this is what actually affects the checkout time of the people, the size of the products they're checking out, maybe how old they are, and things like that. And those insights, even though it's far from the final model, they were already valuable for making decisions about that part of the process. They already raised some questions, good questions, and raised some alarms in the business person's minds, but also served as a way to validate that we are on the right track to building a good model. And the last thing here is that the concept, the idea of proof of concept is very popular in AI. Everybody's doing POCs, but we often forget about value. Yeah, we make sure that something works, but we don't make sure that it brings value. Another thing we did this year was trying to predict when are you going to come to the store next time. Yeah, so you have some repeating pattern, how you come maybe on Thursdays, maybe every second Tuesday or whatever, and we try to understand when are you going to come. So that we can time the communications accordingly. Maybe send you an email the day before you come. So we built kind of a basic model. It had some accuracy for the loyal customers. So we proved the concept, and we thought, great, this thing is predictable to some extent. So we invested more time and built a better model with better accuracy, so we can better predict when you're going to come. And only then, we actually tried sending emails based on that, yeah, and measuring, does it drive your sales, the timing of the communication. That's when we found out that no, it doesn't. So no matter how well we can predict, the end-to-end value chain is not working. Yeah? So when you build something, don't just test that the model works, test that it brings the value. So test the end-to-end chain. I call it proof of value. On the tool side, first, somebody smart said that if your model isn't in production, does it really exist? And that's really a good question. And there's often this last mile problem, yeah, the making something productive, operationalizing it takes sometimes 80% of the time rather than building the model. And there is a lot of challenges and reasons for that on the people side of things, but there's also the technology side of things. If we, for example, build a model that can set the best price for a bottle of Coca-Cola or for bananas, how does it actually end up on the shelf? It's a process that takes maybe 6 people, 2 decision makers, 3 different systems. So where does that model live? How does that price end up on the shelf? And here you really need to prepare all of your IT landscape to be able to accept and embed the models into them, yeah, to avoid some kind of ugly integrations. And most legacy systems are not ready for that. The other thing that's often overlooked is that when you think of a project and how much value it's going to bring, you think about the direct effect of that project. However, we see increasingly that so many elements are reusable, and so much of the costs and the time is actually amortized across projects. If you do data collection, build some kind of model, you answer some kind of questions, test some kind of hypotheses, chances are this is going to come handy in some other model that you're trying to build. One example could be a product similarity model that we've tried to build, kind of what is similar to what. Small Pepsi to small Coke, or bananas to courgettes or whatever. And this can be used in forecasting when you need kind of to substitute for a product without data. This is useful for recommendations. This is useful for all kinds of things. Same as the models that the classic retail model that checks what's bought together. Yeah, gin and tonic, tomato sauce and pasta, and so on. We built this model once, first time for the recommendations in our e-commerce site, and then we saw that, okay, this is actually useful to understand how promotions work. If you make a promotion on gin, what else is growing? Maybe tonic is growing. Then we saw it's also useful for personalized offers in the terminals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there is plenty of these things that are very, very reusable, so you need to take that into account. You also need to take this into account when you make buy versus build decisions. If somebody comes and tells you, we have this best engine that optimizes prices, you need to understand when in the next use case you want to build something around price, elasticity, maybe you want to check, I don't know, how your promotions are working or at what price you should sell best before chicken. You will have to rebuild that. If you build it yourself, you will not have to rebuild that. Yeah? So this is one thing that we found that we really didn't see that well in the beginning. Another thing that's common is that, and the misconception is that the more sophisticated something is, the better. We hear a lot, including on this stage, about neural networks, all kinds of fancy approaches, and so on. Yes, if it's worth it to go that way, you should do it. But we saw that a simple model goes a long way. Yeah? Same recommendations that we have in e-commerce. It's the plainest possible vanilla association rules model. Yeah? Conditional probability, one formula. We did some rules on top of that to make sure we have a good mix of products, but it's basically 2 lines of code. And we see that it's driving something like 3% of the sales in e-commerce, which is quite many zeros for us. Another thing, probably your companies are going through some sort of digitalization. Maybe you're digitizing customer service, expense reporting, your sales process, or whatever that is. And we saw that oftentimes, if you see that digitalization only as a way to digitize something and have a more efficient process, you're missing out on a lot. We saw that whenever you do something like that, ask yourself, can we also generate some data that can be useful for automating the process in the future, or at least understanding it better? Yeah. One example now, we've set up sensors and cameras in the stores to count the people coming in because COVID restrictions. Yeah. And then I come up and ask, hey, can we have some history of how many people came in? And they said, no, no, only the guard sees kind of how many people are in the store today. We are not storing that data. Like, okay, that sucks, because actually this would be a game changer for our analysis of the checkouts, yeah? How many people are actually need to check out. So, and there's many and many examples like this where somebody digitized the process, but they never thought to store the data from it, didn't see it as an asset, yeah? And if you want to automate and draw insights using AI, from all kinds of processes, you really need to start seeing those digitalization projects as enablers for AI. And well, last but not least, the boring topic. You need to ask yourself if your data looks like a well-organized library or like a used bookshop. Is everything labeled? Is everything structured? Do you know what things mean? We saw that this is a challenge both in overall data-driven journey, because people can't make data-driven decisions if they don't know where the data is, what it means, but also a challenge for data scientists, yeah, and developing AI solutions, because they need to explore. They need new factors, new fields, new features, and they try to experiment. And when all they have is some kind of list of technical table names in a database, and they have to go through 3 people to find where a particular thing is, it really hinders that exploration. People, people, people. Probably the most important learning for us is really how important it is to raise the awareness, to inspire people, and to educate them. Back in the day when we started these discovery workshops, I sat down with one of our team leads inside of marketing department and said, okay, let's talk about how we can use AI in your team. And I put up the first slide saying AI, roadmap, building, whatever. And she's like, Nikita, what is AI? I'm like, whoa, that's a deep question. AI is, it's a set of methods that we can use, and blah, blah, blah. She's like, no, no, no. What do the letters stand for? E. I'm like, well, artificial intelligence. And she said, okay, that sounds good. I guess we can automate many things. Is it some kind of system? Can we install it? That must be useful. And I'm like, okay, we need to go really 5 steps back before we can actually productively brainstorm with business people on how we can use AI. And there's a lot between that level of understanding and where we should be. Yeah, and there's the other example. And we've done a lot of roadshows, use case demonstrations on senior levels, really demystifying this, telling people how we use this already, and so on. And now there are the opposite examples. Yeah, teams coming to me saying, hey, Nikita, we in our small team want to be the best at AI in Rimi. Here's our list of use cases. Here's how other retailers are doing it. This is our priority. Let's get it done. Yeah, and really a game changer for how likely you are to succeed in this area. Next, chances are that when you begin this journey, you will not be self-sufficient. You will lack competencies. You will lack resources. You will not be able to predict very well how long things take. So you need the kind of a safety pillow or a partner who can help you out in this. We've worked with 4 or 5 different partners, and I can tell it's really important what kind of cooperation you have with them. Yeah, you can do body leasing, kind of get a data scientist and they will build something, but you can only do that at the later stages. When you know exactly what you want, you can give a good task, you can take that model and put it into production. In the beginning, most likely you will need something kind of more than a one-night stand. Yeah, more like a real partner, somebody who will understand your challenges, hopefully also learn your data. You will be able to put them in the same room with the business people, and they will really be kind of temporary part of the team while you are in the beginning. This is something that would have really helped us a lot. The next thing, I already talked about awareness, education, and inspiration, but a sub-lesson of that is that really don't underestimate the effort that it takes. Maybe it's a symptom of the fact that we're a big company. We have like 12,000 employees, out of them probably more than 1,000 decision makers who we need to educate about it. And I thought in the beginning, okay, we're going to put some web page in the internet saying this is what AI is, this is how we use it, everybody's going to learn, and they're going to do great at that. Not the case. You need to consistently, regularly educate, repeat, and show cases and explain and work personally with people to really make it happen. You will need to film all kinds of videos, measure the learning progress, and so on. We set a target this year that we will have 60% of office employees having had at least some training in AI and analytics. And I thought, well, what's hard about that? Just attending 1 hour workshop about AI. It's what, almost November, we're still at 20%. It's really hard to convince people in their very busy schedules to take out some time and learn about robots and learn about mathematics. Of course, we try to make it more friendly, but still, it's a much bigger challenge than it would seem. The next thing, the common misconception is that you can put in data science and AI team and they'll make a project happen. Again, not the case. What we see on average is that an AI project is more like 33% business, 33% data science, and 33% kind of general IT guys working with integrations, user interfaces, and so on. And you really need to reflect that in your planning, and you need to make that expectation clear to your business colleagues, that it's not just that you can build that thing, you will need them to engage and prioritize things for their teams and the IT team that, that is helping them. So this is really, really important. We had a case, somebody texted me from one of our departments and said, hey, we have this AI idea. I'm like, okay, great, sounds doable. And I thought they will come back to me and kind of, make a project team and so on. 3 months later, he's writing to me, Nikita, how's it going with that AI case? I'm like, sorry, it's not really going. It's kind of your responsibility to put a team together and so on. And we've communicated about this many times, but again, there is so much work to do for everybody to understand what it takes and that it should be things should be owned on the business side, and how many moving pieces there really are to put together to make it successful. And the next thing is, well, in the beginning, you will probably do with a central team of data science development that can build 5, maybe 10 different models and put them into production. But you need to ask yourself, what's next? How this is going to work when you have 15, 50, 100, 1,000 models? How is this going to work? Will you have a big team with kind of a suffocating backlog of models to maintain and to build? Or will you scale it somehow? We don't know if this is going to turn out right, but the approach we are taking is that we try to decentralize this and already now grow competence within the business teams, and roles like business analyst, data analyst. And we see that if they bring you at least a half-baked, non-production-ready prototype of a model that they built themselves, and then it's your job to kind of perfect it, make it run, and so on, they have done more than half of the job using their domain expertise. They have tested hypotheses, spoken with the business, and so on and so forth. We see this as a way to scale delivery in this area by really kind of federating it into the different departments. So this is by no means a full list of lessons that are useful. There's probably more. This is just a snapshot of those from our journey that I think are important for you to understand. Maybe some of them are obvious. Maybe some of them are less so. But I hope that this gave you a glimpse of what our learnings are after almost 3 years on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Nice.
Yeah, we have time for questions. And yeah, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and we will provide a mic for you. But first question from my side. I wonder how long we will hear these funny stories about business users who don't know about some technologies. So do you think it's a question of schooling, or what it is?
Yeah, great question, Alex. I think it's a question of experience. Kind of, we now have 2 cohorts of teams in Rimi, basically. Those that have done something in this area and those that haven't. And those that have done something, you can really feel that there is a radical difference in how they treat this. Yeah, there is no this mystical aura around it. They know what it takes. They know what to expect. They know when to trust and not to trust the machines, what the limitations are, and so on. And then there are others still kind of in the dark. Yeah. So I think you need to have everybody going through that experience at least once to learn what it takes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, question there. Put it on top. Yeah, it works.
It's okay. I have a question. Can you tell us best your use case, IA in Rimi? Showcase, yes.
Yeah. There's actually an appendix slide that I have. Can we put the slides back on the screen? Yeah, some are blurred out. Yeah, I was told I cannot show them to you for a good reason. as a laser pointer. We've tried to kind of really touch on different functions. You know, there is this advice that we hear often, how to make AI transformation, take one business function, make everything AI-based, and then scale. We think that it's wrong, and we try to make it wide and do at least something in different departments. Yeah. Some of the things we've done, of course, are quite classic. Yeah, optimizing prices, looking at promotions, doing some recommendations to customers, and so on. Others are more, how to say, unusual. Yeah, I don't know which one to give you as an example. One interesting one that's kind of not very sexy, but we've really liked the approach. The blue one, the AI data quality monitoring. Based on an idea brought to us by some consultants, we realized that we can use AI and data to improve data quality. Yeah? So we have product information, for example, and there is some things that you can read about the product, the name, the ingredients, and so on. And there is some other, like 400 fields about the product. Yeah? And they are very often wrong, which leads to kind of bad customer experience and so on. One of them is allergens, whether there is like nuts or fish in a particular product. So we try to teach the model to read the ingredients, yeah, understand if there is anything fish related there, and correct the data in the system. So an interesting case how we use data to improve data quality. Yeah. Others are of course a lot sexier, but they are also a lot more traditional, how to say, and not surprising. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, then the question from my side. So you mentioned it many times in your presentation, word value. And a really serious question is about how you explain, in the same way you explain the AI and other terms internally, how you explain this business value, because we understand that value is something good, but what exactly, it could be anything. It could be utilization, quality, profit, and so on. How you explain the business value in Rimi?
That's probably also one of the biggest challenges. I didn't include anything in lessons learned because we haven't cracked this. Yeah, of course there are people who come and say, how much money has AI brought to us in the past 2 years? It's a very difficult question. You can say how much automation brought you if you automated some process with RPA because you basically fired people, saved costs on them, yeah? But with AI, you try to think, okay, what's the benefit of better decisions on price or on recommendations, yeah? And that's where it becomes really difficult to measure. When you use AI to drive loyalty or to inspire people or to hopefully improve the decisions of your decision makers, it's really hard to measure. We saw that in some use cases it's easier, in some it's harder, but we ended up creating a framework, kind of what are these different value mechanisms that can be triggered by an AI process? Is it kind of improving revenue? Is it decreasing costs? How measurable are they? What are the methods how you can measure and understand really what the value is? A/B tests, all other methods. And now we try to take each use case through that framework and really note every value mechanism that the use case brings. And we try to find the time and effort to measure it afterwards. Yeah, not just rolled out, done, but actually compare what would it be without it, what will it be with. Yeah. For example, now one use case which is in progress, we'll have these best before products in the stores, like chicken, beef, bananas, whatever. And people in the stores will need to decide how much to mark them down. What should be the discount on the last day, for example. Yeah. So we'll be having an API that feeds those suggestions into the devices in the stores, saying it should be 30% off. Yeah. So what we'll do, for example, is pilot in some stores where there is no robot, and people have to make decisions, and pilot with the AI-based recommendations where it's based on suggestions. So we'll just see what the difference is. And maybe the models are worse. Yeah, it really depends on how experienced the people are. So.
Okay, thank you. And last question.
Yeah, I have a question here. What is maybe the most funny or ridiculous idea that has come from inexperienced people who wanted to use AI for something that is...
Funny, most ridiculous idea. One that springs to head immediately is that, so we worked with those, 16 different teams, and they send their Excel files with the ideas. And one of the team's number one idea was, can we automate weekly PowerPoint making? Kind of, they had to report to manager or whatever with PowerPoints every week. It's like, well, it's AI, it can do what we can do. Can it automate it? And I said no, and they were very disappointed. So.
Yeah, thank you, Nikita. Great presentation, and great questions answer session. So we could keep you for a whole day, but we need to continue.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.